All right. Good morning, everybody. How is everybody this morning? Good to see you. Somebody remind me to turn that off after we get done. And yet I know better. That's the thing. It's not as bad as the time that I heard about the guy that left his own and went to the bathroom. That's bad. To the bathroom. I can't tell that one. It's many people. Change that. I started to tell a story. I can't tell. And it's true. That's the thing. It is true. It was true. Yeah, I'll tell you that. All right. All right. Well, we're glad to see you this morning. Did you have a good week? It's always good. It's always good to be together. Always good when Sunday rolls around. We have on Facebook. I have a friend who is actually he roomed with my son in college. He roomed. Well, actually, they were in there. Well, they did room same dorm their senior year, and then when they both graduated and they threw them out, and they were still in graduate school, they rented an apartment, a house actually together. And then Clay preaches in Paris, Kentucky, if you know where that is. And every Sunday, I think it's so great, he puts on his Facebook page, it's a wonderful Sunday morning. It's always good. And so, yeah. Well, we're glad you're here. Announcements we need to make. That worth telling. So, Genesis chapter 8. We'll get through the flood this morning. I'm hoping we'll get through, we'll get through it. We're going to get through the Tower of Babel and get that way we can start fresh next week with Abraham, Lord willing. But we do want to be mindful of next Sunday and the kind of have, instead of have church eat church, we'll have church eat. And that's always fun. And we'll enjoy that day and have the service, memorial service for those passed during the pandemic. Genesis chapter 8 is still a continuation, the flood, Noah's deliverance. I like the way verse 1 begins. It says, God remembered Noah. God's faithful. God put Noah on the ark, and the flood has occurred, and now God did not forget Noah. You might say, well, that's really insignificant. And I don't think that it is personally. And here's why. Think about all that's going on. And think about all that's going on with the Lord. Now, are there other universes and other galaxies that God is in control of? I don't know if there are other universes and galaxies. Scientists say that some say there are and some say there aren't. But just think about all that the Lord has going on. And so the Lord remembered Noah. And it says not only Noah and every living thing and all the animals that were with him in the ark, God remembered. It's a great thought for all of us. God remembers us. And that's very comforting. Now, we can always get caught up in our troubles with several different ideas. In the midst of our troubles, we get caught up in the idea, first of all, God doesn't really care. God doesn't care about us. We're just somebody else. Because, to everybody else in this world, you are a what? You're a number, right? You walk up, let me have your phone number, or let me have your address, or let me have but they don't want your name. They want this number or that number, Social Security number, driver's license number, passport number. They want your numbers backwards. They want some kind of number. They don't want your name. God remembers us. In the midst of our troubles, in the midst of our toils, in the midst of our labors, in the midst of our strife, in the midst of our whatever we've got going on, God remembers. God remembered Noah. God remembered all the living things upon the earth. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided. God used means of, if you will, wind to dry the land out. Do you remember another time in which this will happen? Where God will use wind to dry land? Parting of the Red Sea. Parting of the Red Sea. The waters receded, according to verse 3. The ark rested, verse 4. The 7th month, 17th day of the month, the mountains of Ararat. The waters decreased continually until the 10th month. Verse 5. And verse 6 says, so it came to pass at the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window of the ark, which he had made. We talked about that window last week. We talked about, the width of it and probably the fact that it was all up under the deck. And so there was not just a small window, as so many times we see the picture of. But he opens the window, or he opens a window. And notice it says that he sent out a raven. Now, you might ask, well, why a raven? Well, a raven will eat anything. A raven will eat dead flesh. A raven, though, will sort of exist on its own. And notice that he sent out the raven kept going until the waters had dried up from the earth. The raven really wasn't his sign, if you will, that he was looking for from the standpoint of what would come back. Raven, one of the things to think about, and it's not pleasant, I don't mean that, but with the flood killing all the animals, there were probably a lot of dead carcasses floating around. Now, that's not a pleasant thought. It's not a pleasant thought to think about in just a few minutes when Noah gets off the ark. The smell. We don't think about it. It's because it's not pleasant. But there was probably a pretty good odor around for a pretty good length of time. Maybe not. You might say, well, maybe there wasn't. Well, that's true. God could have said, I'll take care of this somehow. But nevertheless, Noah sends out a raven. And the raven goes to and fro, and he's able to rest probably upon those carcasses when he needs to rest. But the raven doesn't come back because that's not the makeup of the raven. But notice in verse 8, he also, Noah, sent out from himself a dove to see if the waters had receded from the face of the ground. But the dove found no resting place for the sole of her foot, and she returned unto the ark to him, for the waters were upon the face of the whole earth. And so he sent a dove out. But the dove came back. Doves have a tendency to do that. I have right now in my backyard 5 mourning doves. Somehow they made it through dove season. And they come most mornings. I see them out there and they're scratching around. And I'm glad for them to be there. I like them. The doves that fly around and know where they are and where they've come from. There is a funeral director west of here that he uses doves in his funeral services. And the funeral director does it. The preacher doesn't do it. And they're pretty. But after you've seen it once or twice, it's enough. But usually he lets them out. And after the service is over, if the family wants them to be let out, of course they pay for it. But he lets them out, and they usually circle the cemetery a couple of times, and then they fly off. And he'll usually tell because their families that do that are always interested in, what happens. And he tells folks that usually, he says, he'll look at his watch, and if it's like 3 in the afternoon, he says, well, they'll beat me home. He said, I'll be home by 5, and they'll be home before I get home. And I think the last time I talked to him, which has been a while back, he'd lost one. But Doves tend to circle for a while. So this dove circled, but it couldn't find anywhere to land, and that was important to the dove because of the fact that it's not like the raven and what it eats. And so, verse 10, he waited 7 days, and he sent out another dove. And notice that it says in verse 11, the dove came to him in the evening, behold, a freshly plucked olive leaf was in her mouth. And Noah knew that the waters had receded from the earth. So he waited yet another 7 days and sent out the dove, which did not return again to him anymore. Now, let's ask a weird question. Why was the olive leaf so important to him, and why did he wait 7 days, and only 7 days after? It is actually on top of the mountain. Olive trees are lower elevation. That's right. That's right. They grow in lower elevations, so it told you that it was on down, which is an interesting concept because think about. Let's go back a little bit further. Something we probably didn't point out was that we found out last week that all the earth was covered, or all the ground. And we talked about whether it's universal or local flood, and one makes up their own mind with regards to that. But it says that it was all covered, meaning that everything was submerged. And so if you use wind to dry out the land, there's been a period of time where the ark was going back and forth fairly heavily. But there's a time in which it settled then upon the mount. And so Noah is still wondering, is the valley dry? And so, as Jay said, the olive trees don't grow on the high mountaintops. They grow down more in the valleys or in lower altitudes. And so when he comes back, yeah. Yeah, no. But at that time, it was probably a whole mountain range. Yeah. We don't know if he was on peak, yeah. Or where. Yeah. That'd be bad if you were teeter-tottering. You can't come to this end of the ark. Stay down there. Yeah. Very true. Good point. Good point. Anything else? All good. So verse 13 says, it came to pass the 601st year, first month, first day of the month, the waters dried up the earth. Noah removed the covering of the ark, looked and beheld, and indeed the surface of the ground was dry, and so they disembarked. Look at verse 15, the commission that God gives. God spoke to Noah. Here's a commission. We've talked about the fact that God gave Noah more than one commission, but here's another one of those commissions. God spoke to Noah saying, go out of the ark, you and your wife and your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing of all flesh that is with you, birds and cattle and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, so that they may be bound in the earth, so that they may abound on the earth, and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. So in other words, he says, you get out of the ark, get everything out of the ark, and you go forth and repopulate the earth, everything. And so Noah and his sons went out, and all the animals went out. They disembarked everything that creeps, every bird, every animal that's in there. Someone said that they left 2 termites. That was to get rid of the boat. It's a joke. It's a bad one. But I take no credit for that one. And so all the animals are off. And then look at verse 20. We alluded to this last week. Noah's first act when he gets off the ark. Worship God. Noah built an altar to the Lord. He took of every clean animal, of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. Remember, he took more of those animals than he did of the unclean. And the Lord smelled a sweet smell. And so, then look at what he says. Then the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground for man's sake. Although the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth, nor will I again destroy every living thing as I have done. He really had already shown to man the folly of his wickedness, that he being God. God had already shown to man the folly of his wickedness. And so to destroy the world again by flood, what purpose would it be? And so from now on, really even before this, but from now on, he's going to show great patience. He's going to show great patience with humanity. And so that's God's promise, is that I'm going to be patient with you. Now, that's not to say, and I don't think that I'm implying that God says, or that God wasn't patient with man before, because remember that basically all that could find grace in the eyes of God at the time of Noah were Noah, and that man's thoughts were on evil continually. So that's not to say that God was not patient with man, but it is to say God's basically saying, I'm going to be patient with you. While the earth, verse 22, remains seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease. There's going to be a rhythm to the earth. God promises, and God promises that he will not interrupt that rhythm. Anything in chapter 8 that needs to be talked about? I don't know. That's a great question. I do know that it's from that point forward. And so that's about the best answer I could give to that, personally. Anybody else, or anybody have a thought on that? All right, well, let's go to chapter 9 then. God blessed Noah and his sons. Isn't it interesting? Chapter 8, God remembered Noah. Chapter 9, God promises, or God blesses Noah and his sons. God gives another commission. Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. The fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast of the earth, on every bird of the air, on all that move on the earth, and on all the flesh of the sea. They are given into the hand. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I will give you all things, even as the green herbs. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. Surely, for your lifeblood, I will demand a reckoning. From the hand of every beast, I will require it. And from the hand of man, from the hand of every man's brother, I will require the life of man. So, here's what he says. You got it? He basically says, I've created this world for you. I'm giving you all this flesh, if you will, to eat, creatures to eat. I'm giving you the herbs. I'm giving you this earth to eat. Now, the one thing he basically says is that the animal should be what? Dead, right? Should be bled, or so thus dead when you eat it. And so, there is a humanity, if you want to call it that. I don't know if that's really the greatest or most proper word to use here, but a humanity with God with regards to even how you treat animals. And so I'm not a vegan. I'm not a vegetarian. I believe in a balanced diet. That is, I'm eating 2 or 3 vegetables, at most meals. That's what I eat. Try to eat. And so my son, our son, not mine, son, when he went off to college, children always, and you know this, but children always have to rebel against their parents somehow. And my child's rebellion against me really has been twofold. He's still got an ugly beard that he still wears. Oh, I'm sorry, Jay. Well, I usually tell him, I say, I tell Ethan, I say, God only made so many pretty faces, and he covered up the rest. But anyway, but Ethan went off and decided for a year to be a vegetarian, and that, to be honest, that was his rebellion against his mom and dad. Ethan was an excellent kid and easy to raise, and so if you've had trouble with your children, I feel for you, and I'm sorry, I really am. But I didn't experience that with mine. And that's not bragging. That's just because that's just the way he was turned. But Ethan turned out to be a vegetarian for a year. And then he broke that. When he went back for his sophomore year, he decided that he was no longer a vegetarian. And he waited till school started. He made it a complete year. And he had told a few friends of his, he was dating not somebody that is his wife now, but another girl. And she told everybody. And so there was about 30 people that went with Ethan and this girl. But they went to Chick-fil-A. And he broke his being a vegetarian with Chick-fil-A. Why he chose Chick-fil-A, you'd have to ask him. I don't know. I don't really care. But God gave us all things, and that's the point. But God blessed Noah. And I want you to key in on this, because hopefully we're going to have time to get to the Tower of Babel. But notice what the first thing is: be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Just hold that thought, and we'll come back to it. Anything else? Verse 6 and 7, there seems to be a punishment that God gives for, or not seems, but there is a punishment that God gives for murder. For whosoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood should be shed. For the image of God he made man. God valued life. Now, in our society today, there seems to be a problem understanding when life begins. I believe life begins at conception. I believe that. I believe that abortion is wrong, should not be funded, should not occur, should not take place. There are other means that if someone finds themselves with an unwanted pregnancy, there are adoption. There are many families that would take those children in a heartbeat, and they are children. They are living. They are alive. I don't apologize for that belief, and I don't back down on it either. But beyond our society, and getting back to the text for me shows God's value of life. That God valued life. And he says that if a man sheds blood, man shall be shed. For the image of God he made man. He values man. And as for you, be fruitful and multiply. There's that thought again. Bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply it. God spoke to Noah then in verse 8 and to his sons. Here's another little commission. As for me, behold, I establish my covenant with you. So God's going to make a covenant. And a covenant is an agreement between at least two people, two parties. And so God says, I'm going to make a covenant with you, Noah, and I'm going to make a covenant with your descendants and with every creature that is with you, the birds, the cattle, beasts. Well, what's the covenant? Verse 11. Thus I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. Now, there's be a lot of hot water, right? A lot of hot water. We suffered from it. A friend from Humphreys County brought me some newspapers from Waverly when the flood occurred there. And there are several pictures of it and in it. And I had to turn one sideways to figure out exactly where I was in the community and what I was looking at. And it's just devastating. A flood in that area, yes. But God's promised never a flood to destroy the earth. God said, verse 12, this is the sign and the covenant that I'll make with you, which I will make between me and you, and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I'll set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. It shall be that I will bring a cloud upon the earth, and the rainbow shall be seen in the cloud. Now I will remember my covenant which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. The water shall never again become a flood to destroy all the flesh. The rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will look on it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and living creature of all flesh on the earth. And God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant which I've established between me and all flesh that's on the earth. I just find this fascinating. God made a covenant. God says to man, God says to Noah, here's my promise to you, and here's my promise to those that are after you, to all generations, that I'm not going to destroy the world by flood again. And I'm putting a rainbow in the sky. And every time you see a rainbow, you can remember that promise. A lot of water, yeah. Flood, no. That rainbow ought to remind us of several things, oughtn't it? It ought to remind us of the promise that God made to Noah here in this instance. It should remind us of the power of God. It should remind us of why it was originally, if you will, put in the sky. It was put in the sky because of what happened, and what happened was because of the wickedness of man. And God wanted to show the wickedness of man and remind the wickedness of man. But also, think about verse 15. God says, I'll remember my covenant. Do you think God ever forgets? I don't think God forgets. Now, he forgets from the standpoint of forgiveness, yes. But just forget an agreement that he's made? No. God says, I'll remember. This will remind me. Well, it should remind us. It should remind us. And so that was the agreement. Noah and his sons, then beginning in verse 18, he tells about Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Those were the sons of Noah. And Noah began to be a farmer. Verse 20, the word farmer there is the New King James Version translates it. Literally means tiller of the soil. And so he was turning soil over, if you will. He planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine, and he was drunk. I tend to give Noah benefit of the doubt. And that is, Noah may not have known that fermented wine would make him act in ways that were not what rational individuals would act like. He drank of this wine and noticed that he didn't act the way he should. His sons, Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the wickedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. So Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid on their shoulders, walked backwards, and covered their father's nakedness. Now, my only question, and I don't have an answer for the question I'm about to raise, is why God put this here. I can make a couple of assumptions, but I don't know why. But Noah didn't act the way he should. His son took care of him. Noah awoke. Noah got up, verse 24. Noah woke up, and this is what he said. Cursed be to Canaan, servant of servants, he shall be to his brethren. And he said, blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem. May Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and he may dwell in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servants. This may be one of the reasons why this is here, to understand that there ultimately did, in the lineage of Noah, there became a pecking order, so to speak. And that may be why the story of Noah's drunkenness tells us that and why it's there. But Noah then lived, it says that he lived 350 years, and so Noah lived to be 950 years old, and he died. Not a lot there, but something there. Anything anybody like to ask or add? Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else? Well, chapter 10. Chapter 10 is a genealogy. It's people and places. If you're into that, that's interesting and fun. But I don't see a lot there for us to garner other than just people and places. And so let's move to chapter 11. And really, the last half of chapter 11 is also a lineage, and So we'll not spend time with that, but I do want to spend time in talking about the Tower of Babel. The whole earth had one language and one speech. Literally, the word means one lip, one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east, they being people, they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks, make them thoroughly." They had brick of stone, they had asphalt for mortar. Here's the plan. Let's make some bricks. Now, we know the story, but we're going to just stop here for a second. Look at this story and think. They've settled, and now they said, okay, we're going to make brick, and we're going to bake it. To bake it is better than to let it cure out by the sun. They're stronger. They hold more. And so he says, let's bake the brick thoroughly. Now, in order to bake the brick thoroughly, what do you have to have? An oven. Yeah. We when I was at the tile making quartz slabs, I was not on the side that literally made them. Yeah, I went over there at different times, but that was not the side I was on. I was on what's called the polishing side. But they talked about the furnace getting up to 1100 degrees. No, you didn't just open it. You didn't stand in front or behind it. You'd have to understand it or see it. And I can't really explain it because I wasn't over there enough to really learn enough about it. But it didn't just open up. Trays were slid in, and then they went in, and then they stood for a while, and then computerized it generally. They came out up top and then were brought down. And so they were at their coolest point at the top. And when I think of that, I think of brick being made. The heat that the furnace would give off in that day and age. The supply that's going to be needed. The work that's going to have to, because what are they wanting to do? Well, they're wanting to build a tower, and they're wanting to build it at least into the heavens. Now, there's a discussion in the text here whether to heaven or into the heavens. Let's go on. Notice that they had stone, and notice that they had asphalt there for mortar. There's a natural asphalt that God provides, and that was there within that area. And so it's a sort of rosin-based material. And so it could hold those things together, those brick together. And it says, let us, verse 4, build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make the name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. Here's what man wants. Man wants to build a beautiful tower, doesn't give us the purpose of the tower. But the tower is to be built, notice what it says, whose top is in the heavens. So how far up that's going to reach, I don't know. But it's going to reach a long, long way up. The word tower here is what's called a ziggurat or ziggurat. A ziggurat is not, when we think of a pyramid, we think of a smooth stone. The Egyptians made them. We think of smooth stone that goes to an apex or to a top. A ziggurat is more like you have one level and then you build a second level on it, and that second level is in a little bit. In other words, let's just use the odd measurements for just a minute. If the first level is 10 by 10, then the second level is 8 by 8. The next level maybe is 6 by 6. You see how it goes in? So it goes in. So you have a level made, and then you have another level, and then so forth and so on. Now, this ziggurat was to be made into the heavens. Now, like I said, how far up, we don't know. But think about what the folks say. Let us build Now, that's key, because the us, it doesn't include God. The us really is the people. It's interesting. Building is important. Buildings are important. And the building itself is important. Buildings need to show maintenance. Buildings need to show upkeep. Buildings need to be kept up with the times. This building that they're wanting to build is simply for show and for themselves. And so they said, let's build the heavens. And notice what it says. Let us make a name for ourselves. They wanted to make a reputation for themselves. How do you make a reputation for yourself? Well, you do something that nobody else does, right? In the state of Tennessee, I know of at least 2 strawberry festivals. Now, there may be more, but I know of 2. One where? Portland. And the other one's in West Tennessee, in Humboldt, Tennessee. That's the one I grew up with. We moved to Waverly. Somebody said something one day about Strawberry Festival. My wife went on because, yes, she marched in it. Yes, she was in the band. Yes, she played an instrument. Yes, she was field commander her senior year. Yes. Ask her about it a couple hours. But anyway, they said in Portland, and my wife deflated like that. Well, we've got at least 2. You go to a little community called Kenton in West Tennessee. You know what they have? What? You want to go to Banana Festival? Where do you go to? Centerville. You're right. I'm just naming some that are around here. Every little community has to have what? Something for which it's known for. Right? Every community has to have something for which it is for. So the community can have a sense of us. These folks wanted to build a ziggurat. Why? For us. Let's make a reputation. How are we going to do that? Well, we got a building in the sky. You know what we got in Nashville? We got Batman building. Notice that it says this, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. That's important. Because what did we just read back in Genesis 8? And God tells Noah when he gets off the ark that they are to go and replenish what? The whole earth. Children of Israel, if you will, the folks that were alive, maybe is probably the best way of saying it. After the flood, years had passed, they become localized. One little area of the world. And so, in the becoming one little area of the world, they decided that this is where we're going to settle and this is what we're going to do. We're going to build this ziggurat. The Lord, verse 5, came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. The Lord said, indeed, the people are one. They all have one language, and this is what they began to do. Now, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down, and there confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from every from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore, its name is called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. Now, I want us to look at several things in those verses. So the Lord sees what's going on. And it says the Lord came down to see the city, see the tower. Notice what he said, sons of men. That's interesting if you think about it. Not sons of God. Sons of God has a reference to the fact that we're children of God. Sons of men, it's just like, well, you're just on the earth. And so Moses, in recording this, says that God saw the sons of men, and God wanted to see what the sons of men had built. And there was great success. There was great success. Why? Well, the people were all one. What does that mean? Well, everybody was doing the same thing. They were building this tower. They were satisfied with the building of the tower. They were happy with the building of the tower. I don't know how that ever happened. I'm honest. I don't care what you do. You can't make everybody happy. You can't do it. You're not gonna do it. A bunch of preachers were together recently, and I was in the midst of them, and some of them were commiserating over some of the younger ones. The fact that as a preacher, you're not going to make everybody happy, and us older ones looked at them and tried to explain that's just the way it is. Did you hear the story about the little boy that his mother and father were content on giving them everything they wanted, or everything he wanted, because he was the only child they had? And so little boy was crying one day. He was crying. Mother was trying to give him, well, what do you want? What do you want to eat? And he said, I want a worm. And she said, no, you don't want a worm. He said, yeah, I want a worm. And so she trying to give him everything that he needed. And so she said, okay. She told the father, she said, go out and get a worm. He said, I'm not getting that kid a worm. Go out and get a worm. So he went out and got a worm. He brought the worm in. The little boy wasn't satisfied. She said, well, you said you'd eat it. He said, well, I want it cooked. I want it fried. And so she fried it. Father was grumbling the whole time. She fried the worm. The little boy said, I want it cut in half. She cut it in half. The little boy's still upset. He's still crying, still mad. He said, I'm not going to eat it unless Dad eats it. Dad says, no, not eating that worm. He said, yeah. Mom said, yeah, you're going to eat it. So he ate it. Little boy's still crying. Mother said, what in the world's wrong now? She said, he said, Dad ate my half. You can't satisfy everybody. And you're just not going to do it. I'm sorry. I gave up on that a long time ago. I try to do the best I can, and I try to lead the best I can. But I sometimes know that folks aren't going to agree with the way I want to go about it. And I try to, sometimes when through the years, elders have turned things over to other people, and that's the way it should be. And we give them, and they go about doing it the best way they see fit. And I don't always like what they're doing, but I let them do it. Why? Because I don't want to be the one that's grumbling about what they're doing, because I don't want them grumbling about what I'm doing. And so here's the point. The Tower of Babel, how they all had the same mind and same mission, I don't know, but they evidently did. Now, you could say it was due to the fact that they all spoke the same language. But we all speak English, but we speak different English, right? Right? My wife works at Petals and Lace up here, the little bridal shop up here. And one morning, the owner was gone. Karen was gone. I don't know where she was, but Karen was gone, and Suzanne was there by herself for a while. I get a call from my sweet wife. I'm sitting in my office here. Come to the front door. And she's not easily excitable, but she's, come to the front door, come to the front door, come to the front door. Front door at home, front door at church building, front door at work. Oh, yeah. I probably need to tell you, we speak English. We speak Southern English as well as anybody else does. We say ain't and can't and all those good words. But Tower of Babel, they were speaking the same language. But because of their pride and because of their arrogance, because they wanted this reputation of being some great thing, and because they hadn't done what God said, go and replenish the earth, God confounded their language. That's why we have a lot of different languages today. This is the origin of it. Can you say that we all go back to one, all languages go back to one? Yeah, but that doesn't mean I can understand them. And so God confounded the language. And so what happened then? Well, they had to spread out, right? They had to get on with their lesson, or on with their what God had told them to do. The lesson, in many ways, is a lesson of unity. Be united, but also communicate. Communicate. Churches need to communicate. Churches need to talk. It's one of the thrilling things about this congregation is that we have congregational meetings from time to time. Now, they don't always go the way we want them to go, and not everything's said the way we want it to be said, but and we don't always get what we want. Sometimes Dad eats my half of the worm. But at the same point in time, too, there's a general direction, and that's wonderful. And we should all understand that everybody. I was raised on this one saying, and I'm probably going to use it in a Wednesday night talk here next little bit. But my dad was an elder of a congregation of about 500, and Dad said when the 6 of us elders go into a room, and then there was 5 for a long time, he said, we all have our say, but not everybody has his way. And I believe that. Like I say, I was raised on that. I've thought about it. I've been a preacher for too long, probably 37 years. And everybody has his say, not everybody has his way, but we don't have to get upset about the fact that we don't get our way. And learn to love each other. But the problem in Genesis was not so much a communication or a unity problem as it was a selfish problem. They wanted this big name. They wanted this big reputation. They were selfish. And God says, I'm going to show you. Go do now what I tell you to do. And with that, then next week, we pick up back in a storytelling mood more in Genesis chapter 12 as we began the journey with who? Abraham. Yeah, Abraham. We began the story with Abraham. And what a great story that is. Anything else anybody like to say or add?
Let us go down there and do this. Was this to show the angels that he's in control, or that he can?
Yeah.
You didn't think he would need any help to do this?
Yeah. Yeah, I would think that the whole Godhead, Father, Son, and Spirit, were there and part of it. And yes, oh yeah. I don't think he does anything without teaching. Great teacher. Anything else? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was all about selfishness. All about them and not about God. Which is interesting because Noah found grace in the eyes of God, and so thus the Hebrew writer says Noah did everything according to what God had commanded him, when he built the ark. And the first thing that Noah does when he gets off the ark is do what? We just covered it. And we covered it last week. That's why I didn't really say much about it this week. But he builds an altar and he worships God. First thing he does. So the important thing is remember God in everything we do. Anything else? Let's bow right quick. Our Father in heaven, we're so thankful for this day. We're thankful for the blessing of it. Thankful that you love us, that you watch over us, that you do take care of us. Thankful for every blessing that we have. Thankful that you love us and that you watch over us. And we ask that you continue to watch over us and bless us in our work. That you continue to bless us in our lives. You continue to bless our families. That everyone that touches us and everyone that we touch. We ask that you be with those that are sick, be with those that will be announced in just a few minutes, and those that are on our announcement sheet. We ask that you be with this congregation, help us to always love one another and to always do the best we can. Watch over us, bless us, and keep us. Forgive us of our sins, for this is our prayer in Christ's name. Amen. Have a great, great week. Love y'all.